Who's that thinking 90s thoughts? 90s boy. Who's that in that 90s car? 90s boy. Who's that listening to 90s songs? 90s boy. Who's that bringing the 90s back? 90s boy. Ladies. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. Since Justin Timberlake has never bothered to apologize for his part in torpedoing your career entirely, let me just say I'm sorry that the nation was so conservative at the time that they couldn't handle the sights of a nipple on television. Like, ooh, out of all the horrendous stuff that the NFL does, that's what's going to make it unsuitable for children to watch. Oh, I'm so sorry. Carry on. No, by all means, please go ahead and pretend that you have a soul, you amazing organization. Yep, that's how it happened, pretty much. Today was a Super Bowl, by the way. Did you guys see that? Yeah. Congratulations, whatever team my viewers hate less. Good job there, guys. I didn't watch it. I never watch it. Janet Jackson has come up a lot lately, ever since they announced that Timberlake was going to be the performer at this year's halftime. Obviously, it would be his first time making an appearance at that event since the last one, which we all know how that one went. I always thought that it was a little unfair. And personally, I think it had more to do with the timing of when it happened in Janet Jackson's career. Would anyone believe you today if you told them that there was a good stretch of the 90s where Janet was actually a bigger star than her brother Michael? It's true. When Michael needed a boost for his new single that he was releasing on his album, he brought in Janet to help him out. He had a duet with her on his song because at that point, I mean, when she started out, they said, oh, she's riding Michael's coattails because Michael was the one who was big at the time. She got her start back in, like, 1982. That song was Nasty, by the way, from 1986, from her big hit album Control. Apparently today, February 4th, 2018, today is the 32nd anniversary since Control came out. Yeah, everything's really coming up Janet right about now. Ever since Timberlake was announced as this year's halftime performer at the Super Bowl, everybody seems to be coming out and showing solidarity with Janet. It's about time. Like, where was that? Was anybody coming to her defense when the incident happened in 2004? I don't remember anything like that, you know? I think everyone is pretty much ready to say, okay, yeah, she can go away now. Rarely do you see such an ignominious, instantaneous fall from grace happen. Like, it was like overnight. She went almost straight from living legend to persona non grata. You rarely see that happen. I mean, it happens. It usually takes a little bit longer than that. Rarely do you see it and you're able to trace it to one singular event. She got her start in the 80s. By the mid-90s, a good amount of time there, she was the biggest Jackson in the world, one of the biggest pop stars in the world. I read that, according to Billboard's measurements, she is the biggest pop star of the 90s, other than Mariah Carey. I think Mariah is the only one who sold more than her, whatever metric they use to determine that. I was honestly planning to do this episode on Janet anyway. I was planning to do one ever since I had the idea to start the show, I think. I didn't mean to be this timely and this topical. Apparently a hashtag, something like Celebrate International Janet Jackson Day or something, started trending today. Good for them. Maybe this will be the start of some kind of comeback or some kind of resurgence in the public eye. It would be nice because a lot of her hits from the 90s, I think, have aged a lot better than some of the other popular music. That is saying something because she only released really 2 albums in the 90s, and they were both huge, gigantic multi-platinum successes. She just needed to show up, basically. Everything she touched turned to gold at this time. And yes, part of that is due to the fact that she was working with the production team of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis ever since the 80s. She definitely found the right collaborators for her style and for her sound. As the 90s came around, though, she did want to sort of be her own guide. She wanted to take herself whatever direction she was going to go next. She wanted it to be driven by her. This is the first single from her 1993 album, Janet. Look, when you type in her name, they still just bring up the wardrobe thing first. That's the first thing that comes up. I think we are on our way to rehabbing her image. It's just taken a long time. Hopefully she'll return to some kind of iconic status before the end of the decade, at least. But this is the first single from her gigantic smash hit album. It's called That's the Way Love Goes.
Blind, can't you see my desire goes?
They still play this to this day. This is one of her songs that has endured even more so than a lot of her other music. This is just smooth, mellow funk soul that you can still dig. I don't even think there was anything that sounded like this at the time, and I don't know why there wasn't. There was more stuff like this later because people started biting off of it. So I want to talk a little about why I think she did manage to eclipse brother Michael at this time. As far as being a success in the music industry, I think she was far more adaptable and flexible than Michael was. By the time the 90s came around, Michael seemed really old. To some extent, he belonged to another time, and, obviously he was never able to follow up the success of the biggest album ever released. I mean, nobody would have been able to follow that up. I always felt like he didn't quite fit in anymore as rap became a greater force and as R&B started to trend more towards those types of sounds. Yeah, he was kind of out of time by then. But to me, Janet could fit right into either of those modes, and she was kind of ahead of the curve on that. She was already getting in. Did you hear that song at the beginning of the video? It just has like sort of a force and a fire and a weirdness to it even. This is another big single at the time. I remember being big. It doesn't seem like it's survived the way that this song has, but at the time, this was pretty much just as big. This is called If. Ooh, is that guitar work? It sounds like Buckethead or something. So this is more of a harder edge dance song. It's just like, dude, those guitar sounds are wicked. She was willing to be a little more experimental in her pop stylings, and I think that was why she was able to remain successful and remain relevant. Did you know she was one of the most highest paid recording artists in history? She signed like a $40 million contract with Virgin Records and then re-signed with them for like twice as much. Like, that's how in demand she was. Yeah, I like this one. It is pretty impressive considering how indistinct her vocals are a lot of the time. I do feel like 90s R&B got a lot more aggressive on the female side, and she was part of it. You know what's funny though is that drum beat is almost identical to That's the Way Love Goes, and yet it's a totally different sounding song. So this single is called Escapade. This is actually her first single in the 90s. I mean, yes, she was able to transition from the 80s to the 90s, unlike a lot of artists who just floundered by the time it got to the 90s, even though they had success in the previous decade. To be fair, she did have a head start because Control was in 1986, and then her next album after that was Rhythm Nation from 1989. That was another huge success. So that album came out in 1989, had a lot of successful singles on it, but this is the first one that was released in 1990. Just immortal shelf life. It never goes away. At least I haven't heard it go away in all the time since I've been listening to music. And this production this is as good as it got, I think, from that time. Maybe certain Madonna or Prince songs arguably might have had production on this level or better, but I can't think of any others. It's like soft, but it's not too demure. It's a really weird fine line that she walks when she sings. She was a pretty good dancer too. Maybe Michael's dance moves were a little more interesting, but no, she could dance too. I mean, this is really a total package that we're seeing here. In 1995, Michael Jackson released the album History. By then, Janet's album had gone like 10 or 12 times platinum or something. I think this is their only collaboration. This might be the only time Michael collaborated with someone else in his family, post Jackson 5. But I don't know, there could be another one. This is a song called Scream. I think it was co-written by Michael and Janet. It's a bit more of like a rough rock sounding song. By the way, Janet totally steals the show in this song too. It was nice of Michael to let her upstage him. If he's gonna have her on, he knows who the real star is. So there's Michael. And here's Janet. I mean, they're both singing really simple parts. I just felt like her part worked a little bit harder to sell the song. I wonder if they ever hung out, honestly. There's a little bit of an age difference between them. I gotta say, I think they sounded good together. I don't know why they didn't do this more often. Maybe Michael, asked, oh, can I feature on your next album? She's like, I don't really need you to do that. Chill at the ranch and I got this. A lot was riding on this album for Michael, by the way. If you don't know, History is a double album where the first disc is basically greatest hits of Michael Jackson so far, and then the second disc is his new material, or the new studio album that he's just made. It was really an attempt to thrust him back into the spotlight. I guess he commissioned this giant bronze statue of himself or something, and that was featured on the cover of the album. No one ever accused Michael of not being ostentatious enough, I guess. This is another single that I remember very well from it. This is a love ballad called Again. So just to prove that, you know, she's not just a bunch of production gimmicks. She could do a song simple, straightforward, almost a little folky, like this one. I mean, her voice sounds good. Like, a lot of the times on her songs, the production sort of drowns out her voice. It's not always front and center. Imagine having a voice like this and being like, people don't really need to hear it that much. So it's just a really cute little simple song. Everybody had this album, by the way. I talked about in my Boys and Men video how everyone had their album. This was another one of those that everyone had. I never owned it myself though, and I don't know why. This song probably hasn't survived as much as her others because it's not as unique. There was probably a lot of stuff that sounded like this at the time. This is almost a throwback soft rock song. This is another slower song by her. This is kind of a risque song. It's called Anytime, Anyplace. By the way, anyone who was surprised that we eventually saw one of Janet's nipples was not paying very much attention to Janet's career. That was another thing that she had that Michael didn't have. She had the ability to sort of project her sensual side. So she had the ability to bring that in her songs. I never really felt that from Michael. I think the closest thing he ever had to being able to tap into that side of himself was probably Human Nature. That seems like the only song where he's really going for that sort of vibe. He was never really much of a lover man in his songs. So this song is Anytime, Anyplace. It's about, I guess, Janet wants to be with this guy anytime and any place. Yeah, it's pretty exhibitionist. I'm skipping over some of the other big singles from that album because there's just too many of them. What's weird about this one is it wasn't even a single from the album, I don't think. It was released in like some kind of stopgap in between. But I really like the production on this one as well. Oh, listen to that. So this is leaning into more of a world music sort of vibe, different instrumentation in the mix, marimbas. That's a sitar, I guess, which is fitting. The song has got a globe-trotting theme. Oh, the song's called Runaway. I really like that looping camera flash, by the way. Listen. Just going around the world, taking snaps. This is kind of a throwback to Escapade, actually. But yeah, we have a very versatile pop star on our hands here. She can do almost anything, it seems like. She can flip between different modes. She's got a lot of different sides to her personality. She's got the soft edge, the hard edge. She can do something that's a little sweet and a little innocent like this, or Escapade. And she can do something that's a little more raw and a little more dirty. And she can dance. I don't know, what can she do? It's a good question. This is a good part coming up where she doesn't hit a note, so she does it again. And she admits that she missed it. Check it out. That wasn't such a good time. She had a sense of humor about herself. I don't know, she couldn't have been that good, could she? Maybe I'm praising her too much. Let me go to her next album. So this is a song from The Velvet Rope. That was her follow-up. This is in 1997, so this is the second of the 2 albums she released in the 90s. Oh, this is Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest, by the way. Her style's already updated. She just moved, man. She just, kept changing, you know. The 90s didn't stay stagnant. It seemed like nothing would stick in the 90s. Every trend just came and vanished almost instantly. And somehow she's able to, I don't know, I guess she was just following her own whatever direction she wanted to go in, and maybe the pop music world had no choice but to follow along. But this is the song Got Till It's Gone, so it's got Janet Jackson, Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest, plus a sample of Joni Mitchell's Big Yellow Taxi. Right there, you have three of the greatest artists of all time within the same track. Honestly, I always thought that was Janet singing it. I didn't know that was a sample of another singer. I guess her vocals were versatile enough. She could approximate that type of sound if she wanted to. Was this a Jay Dilla? Oh man, this was produced by Jay Dilla. Okay, so if you don't know, Jay Dilla is this legendary producer who died young in 2006. So he died before his time, but he produced a bunch of hit songs, including this one. I can't believe I didn't know that. Joni Mitchell never lies, you guys. I guess she just had really good taste in producers and production. This might be a remix, actually. I think there's an original version of the song that doesn't have the sample. Let me just fuck with it. Wanna go and do that? Why you wanna go and do that and do that? This song is called Together Again. I think she was going for a little more earthier vibe on this one. It seems like it's a little more organic, a little more live instrumentation to it, maybe, or at least live sounding. You know, this actually does sound like a faster version of the song again. This kind of sounds like Ghost Town DJs. What's this song? See what I mean? Like, her voice is very buried in the mix here. It's almost a background vocal with no, lead vocals in it. Maybe this album wasn't considered as successful as the previous one, but I'm pretty sure it was still a really big success. And this sounds like it could be released today, actually. The last song I'm going to play here, this is actually not her song. This is a Busta Rhymes song that she featured on, because I don't think she featured with a lot of other musicians. Everybody was collaborating with each other in the 90s. That's sort of how I remember it. A lot of posse cuts with rappers and things like that. I don't recall seeing her in a lot of other people's songs, other than that Michael Jackson song that I played and this one. Oh, What's It Gonna Be? It's a Busta Rhymes song, so the majority of the vocals on it is going to be Busta Rhymes. This is Busta Rhymes' version of a slow jam, and if you know what kind of rapper he is, it's a very odd pairing. I think this is from his 1997 album. Yeah, I don't know if I really buy Busta Rhymes as a lover man either. He's kind of just coasting on her efforts, I think, on this one. He's just too weird. I don't know if this works. Those are songs that all had a very strong presence in my upbringing, in my memory. Hopefully one day we'll be able to come around to appreciating them again. And I think that day is coming soon. Apparently people asked if she was going to show up for the Timberlake performance, and she said, no way, I wouldn't either. Why? What would she have to gain? Once enough time goes by, we do tend to forget about whatever someone did that made them into a pariah. Maybe at some point we'll decide that we're sick of Timberlake's bullshit too. The tides will turn and the poles will reverse themselves. And until then, I'm the Jake Wheel, and this was Bad 90s Music.